And we are back on the 0 hour. This is Richard R.J. Eskow. We are reporting from Netroots Nation, the progressive conference being held this year in Atlanta, Georgia. And joining us now is a political figure from the state of Georgia. Stacey Abrams is the former House Minority Leader here in Georgia. She is running for governor as a Democrat. And first of all, Stacey Abrams, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Secondly, word is just starting to get out nationally that there's a governor's race on here in Georgia. And I guess my question for you, number one, is everybody tells me that the 6th District of Georgia, for example, is a Republican district. And everybody tells me that Georgia is a Republican state, right? I mean, you hear this all the time. It's as if the people who don't vote are invisible or something, right? So my first question for you, and we'll get into all of that, your background and everything else, my first question for you, Stacey Abrams, is can a Democrat win and why?
Absolutely. A Democrat can win because there are enough Democrats in the state of Georgia for us to win every election going forward. Now, that's different than winning a gerrymandered congressional district. John Ossoff's district, the 6th District, was a Republican district. It is a Republican district. He did an extraordinary thing by getting that close, but it would have taken a much stronger tsunami and a little longer time to actually take that district. The state of Georgia is different. Right now, the state of Georgia is 53% white, 47% people of color. The composition of the state is very different than most people realize. But the challenge is exactly what you laid out, which is that too many of our voters are ignored by our politicians. We don't campaign across Georgia. We campaign in Atlanta, we hit some of the other big cities, and then we think we're done. This is a state of 159 counties. We have to go and find every one of those voters, but we only need 200,000 to win an election. I'm going to win this election because I'm going to find those voters, I'm going to talk to those voters, and I'm going to talk to them about the issues that they have. Because the other reason we lose, and we're reductive about it, we talk about message, but what we really mean is people need to believe that if they're going to take the time to vote, that there's a value to that vote, that there's a reality that will change for them if they vote. And my goal, my mission in this campaign is to make certain that they recognize if they hire me to be their new governor, then I will do my best to make sure their lives get better.
The other thing that I always focus on when we're talking about elections is, and especially in a state like Georgia, and especially with the numbers that you just cited, which are extremely interesting, is I always think about that single mother who's working, maybe she's working at a fast food restaurant, maybe she's working at someplace, a retail job or something. But Democratic voters, they tend to be more people of color who get overlooked in the electoral process. They also tend to be more working people.
Yep.
So I think of that woman who, week to week, she doesn't know what shift she's going to be working or what days because her supervisor is changing that up on her all the time. She can't get child care, much less, not only that, but all these obstacles have been thrown in her way to vote because of where she lives, maybe what color she is, whatever. So she has to care enough. She has to have enough faith that going out and voting is going to make her life and her world better, that she's going to maybe lose the income, that she's going to have to go all the way across town, that, I don't know the specific geographics here as well as I do some other states, but, they're making it, those other people, those are making it very, very hard.
Absolutely.
And so for me, for a Democrat to succeed, it's got to be, the message has got to be tailored, but it's also got to be one that inspires people to think, yes, this is going to make a difference. I'm actually going to make the sacrifice required, because we are now making it so that people have to sacrifice to vote.
Absolutely. So my campaign begins with this conversation. We spend a lot of time helping people survive, not helping them thrive, not helping them succeed. But we also have to acknowledge that we've left too many people out and left them behind. So let's take your woman. Let's say she's a single Latina woman, a single mom of 2. First thing that I'm going to talk about is educating bold and ambitious children from cradle to career, which means high quality daycare has to be part of my mantra, and it is. It's part of my platform, because she needs to know that she can drop her child off and that her child is not going to start falling behind from infancy and will be able to learn. We're going to expand pre-K so that when that child is 3 and 4, the child is learning and is going to be on par with her wealthier counterparts when she gets to elementary school. school. Then we have excellence in education that provide a whole education for that child. If that child wants to go to technical college when she graduates, then she can go to technical college. If she wants an apprenticeship, we're going to work with labor unions to make sure she's trained in a trade that can pay her $45 an hour. And if that's not what she wants, then what we will do next is send her to college and make sure college is affordable. But technical college should be free. The apprenticeship should be free. The second part of what we're going to do for that mom is that for her, we need to build a thriving and diverse economy where we don't allow on-call scheduling without some restrictions, where she can work for a living wage, not slave wages that barely let her make ends meet. That she doesn't have to work 2 or 3 jobs to take care of her family, but she can work one job, and if she wants, she can start her own company, because we're going to invest in her the same way we're willing to invest in companies that we steal from other places. And then we're going to have an engaged government that recognizes that she needs to have her civil rights defended, that she needs to have her voting rights defended, that criminal justice reform is not just about the people behind bars, it's the communities that they have to return to. And that if she is in a family that's mixed documentation, that she can believe that her family will be safe and protected, because if they're in our state, they deserve the protection of our government.
So what about the people who say, Stacey Abrams, that sounds fantastic, and I'm for all of that stuff, but, you still got to deal with those Republicans.
Absolutely.
Which you've been doing. You did in your past life. So how are you going to do those great things if you got those Republicans to deal with?
So I've made my responsibility, my first job is to negotiate to get the best deal possible for our citizens. So when it means I need to work with Republicans, I have, to make sure that we've got state investment in public transit for the first time in the history of the state. Because she can't get to work if she can't get on a bus or on a train. I've also done the work to fight Republicans when I think they're wrong, and I've won. And those are two things that you have to have in a leader. Someone who's willing to fight when it's necessary, but who also has the strength to work together with other people. Because if I have to get my own way every time, you shouldn't put me in charge. But you should put me in charge if you know I can work across the aisle when it's for your best interest, and that I will fight to always protect your interest. But the other piece of this is, and the reason I'm running, is that I've got the experience to actually do these jobs. I've created jobs in Georgia. I've fought and protected voter rights. I've registered more than 200,000 people of color in the last 2.5 years. I've done the hard work of legislating, of working with Republicans and fighting Republicans. But when it comes down to it, the people get what they need when they demand it. And you have to demand that Republicans invest in education, that they build thriving and diverse economies. But in the state of Georgia, the governor has a lot of power to make that happen.
So, okay, now let me pivot a little bit. And again, we're talking with Stacey Abrams, who is running for governor here in the state of Georgia. So now I live in Washington, D.C., and I've read a couple articles about the governor's race, and, I read Stacey Abrams. She seems like such a great progressive. Then I read about this other candidate, and I think, well, he seems like a good progressive, too. And how do progressives from out of state know who's the right person to back?
So here's the thing. The distinction I would draw between myself and my opponent, who also happens to have the first name of Stacey, is this. I believe in defending public education. My opponent has voted in favor of privatizing public education. She's voted for vouchers. She's voted for school takeover, the same school takeover that you heard about in Michigan and in Louisiana. She has basically lifted up the Betsy DeVos playbook of education reform. That type of person is not progressive on education. My opponent has taken steps to try to reintroduce predatory lending to the state of Georgia. I've fought predatory lending. And so if you're looking for a true progressive, you can't just look at one issue. You have to look at the entirety of a record. You have to look at who not only has talked about progress, but who's executed against it. I didn't talk about voter registration. I registered 200,000 people. I didn't talk about protecting a scholarship. I made sure the scholarship survived, and I protected pre-K and technical colleges. And then I came back and said, we've got more work to do. And so what I would say is, look at our records. Look at my record, look at her record. And when you put them side by side, there is no one in this race, Democrat or Republican, who has a better stronger and more clear track record than I do to get progress done in the state of Georgia.
So to run for governor anywhere, and Georgia's a pretty big state, you need money, right?
Yes.
And you need endorsements, and you need support, and you need all that stuff. So what have you been? What should people know about you in the endorsement area, or
So
all that stuff?
I've been
Fundraising.
extraordinarily blessed. I've gotten the endorsement of Congressman John Lewis, who rarely endorses in primaries in Georgia. I have the endorsement of Emily's List, of NARAL, of most of our labor unions that have made endorsements so far. I've got the endorsement of Democracy for America, Let America Vote. Wendy Davis out of Texas, she and I met a few years ago. She's endorsed me. This morning I found there was an article in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that Jimmy Carter said that I would hopefully be the next governor. Now that's not an endorsement. I don't want to speak for him, but it's a pretty strong, I think, nod in my direction. And so I would say look at who stood up for me, but more importantly, look at who I've hired and look at what I've done. In the 60 days plus that we've been running, more than 1,000 activists have turned out at the events that I've held in the 12 places across the state of Georgia. I've had more than 100 volunteers show up for our first day of action. We raised $541,000 in our first 2 months of fundraising. Of that, we had 3,000 contributors, and half of our contributors gave $25 or less. We raised $70,000 from contributors who gave $100 or less. So I've got the people power, I've got the grass tops and the grassroots and the folks in the middle. But the other piece is that I have a campaign that looks like Georgia, that is African American, Latino, Asian American, that is black, that is men and women, that is gay and straight. I have Bernie folks, I have Hillary folks, I have Obama folks. I am running a campaign that looks like what Democrats in Georgia are and what we can be.
All right. Let's close with this. I don't think you'll find this one a tough question.
Yes.
Where can people go to find out more about what you're doing?
I'm so glad you asked.
Right.
So StaceyAbrams.com, StaceyAbrams. I can be found on Twitter at Stacey Abrams. I can be found on Instagram at Stacey Abrams, and I can be found on Facebook at Stacey Abrams. But more than that, what I want is to hear from folks. This is a conversation not just about Georgia. It's a national conversation, because if we take Georgia, if Democrats take Georgia, we change the South. And if we change the South, we can change the nation. And I want to be part of making that happen.
Okay, last observation before I let you go, which is I'm so old that I remember when people used to talk about the New South.
Yes.
Think the New South? Think there could be a New South?
I believe that the new South is on the way.
All right.
And I want to be the leader.
All right. Stacey Abrams, candidate for governor. Thank you so much.
RJ, thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. And we will be right back after this. This is Richard RJ Esco, and this is The Zero Hour.